Mayor and Council, the first question is, should retail dispensaries be permitted inside the city of Decatur? That is a big policy decision by itself, and if you decide to opt out, there are really no further questions to answer. If you decide to opt in, then there are a series of other questions which I have displayed up here on the slide. Such things as, what is the local tax rate? How many licenses do you want to allow in Decatur? What should the hours of operation be? Should there be any business license fees associated with it? For 1 year or 2 years, the state will grant their licenses for a period of 2 years. And should dispensaries be allowed, and this sort of gets into the zoning and land use control issues, should dispensaries be allowed in strip malls or required to be standalone, and what other use restrictions do you want to apply in the land use code? All of those questions, A, B, C, D, E, are irrelevant if you opt out. So if you like, we can have Wendy go through the ordinances that are attached to this item, which is listed in your agenda as 52.3 and 51.6 as a way of starting. But again, those are based on these follow-up questions. So these are going to be relevant if you opt in. The ordinances that are listed here in the agenda, 52.3 and 51.6, are only relevant if you opt in. So you might want to take comment about the whole question of opting in or opting out before you would go to those questions. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that's probably the best way to proceed. So I think we'll start with Mr. Horn on my left on your thoughts on whether the city should opt in or opt out of having dispensaries in Decatur.
On January 1st, 2020, it will be legal for individuals over the age of 21 to possess and use cannabis throughout the state of Illinois. Not permitting a dispensary does not mean that adult use cannabis will be illegal in Decatur. It means that it will not be sold in Decatur. Two surrounding communities, Springfield and Urbana, have already approved adult use cannabis dispensaries. The Decatur metropolitan area, which includes smaller communities, is eligible for only one dispensary as of May 1st, 2020. This dispensary could be in Decatur, Illinois. It could be in a small municipality like Niantic, or it could be in an unincorporated area of Macon County. In my view, if there is going to be a dispensary in the Decatur metropolitan area, it should be in the city of Decatur, where 70% of the county's residents reside. Whatever the increased societal cost of adult use cannabis will be, revenue from an adult use cannabis dispensary will help offset those costs through sales tax revenue in a way that will not occur if the dispensary ends up in a municipality like Harristown. I've had the honor to serve in public office for 2.5 years. Since this time, two themes have been communicated frequently. First, don't raise taxes, and second, don't cut services. What is unclear is how city leaders are not going to raise taxes and maintain services without new and legal sources of revenue. An adult use cannabis dispensary in Decatur gives the city the opportunity to raise revenue through taxation of sales of a soon-to-be legal product. Combined with other cannabis-related businesses, we have the opportunity to create jobs and repurpose vacant buildings. The alternative appears to be that other surrounding communities offer dispensaries, create jobs, repurpose or build new buildings, and receive tax revenue from out-of-town Decatur visitors, while Decatur continues to experience the negative societal consequences to the state legalizing adult use cannabis. A black market for cannabis will likely exist no matter what Decatur decides, but a Decatur dispensary may reduce the black market for individuals willing to purchase the product legally. In the case of adult use cannabis, a black market can be a threat to human health. Drug dealers can distribute cannabis that has elevated levels of THC or be laced with other drugs such as fentanyl, which increases toxicity and enhances health risks. Recent cases regarding vaping illustrate the significant consequences of using unregulated products. It is clear that state policy is ahead of our scientific understanding of the impact of adult-use cannabis, and this creates a large set of unknowns for policymakers at the local level. In the end, I do not see any benefits to the City of Decatur opting out of a dispensary and passing this opportunity on to a nearby local municipality. Opting out will not stop irresponsible individuals from driving under the influence. It will not stop irresponsible individuals from providing access of cannabis to children under the age of 21. I see distinct advantages to having a dispensary in our city, including providing a legal, regulated product to those over 21, putting an end to medical cannabis users having to drive elsewhere to purchase products that help them, and provide a new source of revenue for a city that is experiencing a significant population decline, has lost jobs in the past decade, and a subsequent reduction in tax base.
Thank you, Councilman Horn. Councilman Saber?
Thank you, Mayor. And I wish to thank all our citizens for coming out this evening to voice their concerns and their opinions. This showing tonight strengthens our democracy. Mayor, I just have a short comment to make, and that is that I came here this evening to listen to what my community has to say about this controversial issue. And I believe that's the impression that we have given to our community, that tonight would be a listening session, not a deciding session. So I want to listen to our folks here this evening and see what they have to say. And as we continue this discussion this evening, Mayor, I think it might be helpful if Mr. Wright could restate his analysis of the revenue that would be produced or lost with regard to the question of dispensaries, because I think that would be part of our citizens' factors as they consider the issue. Thank you, Mayor.
And I would be happy to do that. I'd like to hear from all council members first, and if I forget, please remind me. Councilman McDaniel.
Again, this is one of those key questions that comes along every once in a while that council has to make. I always tell people it's easy to sit out in the audience, and it's easier to make decisions than sit up here, whether it's the school board, whether it's city council. For about 6 years, I've been a member of the Decatur Drug-Free Coalition, where we've studied what has happened with drugs, alcohol, on young people and adults. We've studied what's happened in Colorado. They've had legalized marijuana for 5 years. We've in California now a couple years. We've studied the pros and cons, and I've talked to people. They email me. I'm out in the community all the time. People would express their views. I have to say the majority of the people I've talked to of all ages are opposed to us opting in. And now, if you weren't there, don't. Okay. Anyway, I'm in favor of opting out.
Let's have some order in the courtroom. Sir, you'll get your chance to speak at the microphone. So we're going to go through the council. Now you can come up and speak, okay? So, Councilman Walker.
Just pass you up.
Yeah.
I'm working my way this way.
First of all, thank you all for actually caring and showing up for the city of Decatur in this wild topic here today. But it's very important, and at the end of the day, you guys are the constituents, and we have to make sure that we're an extension of you guys and making sure that we're here listening to what you guys want to state, because at the end of the day, you All of you constituents are the ones who put us in this position, okay? We're not dictators. Our job is here to facilitate, just same as it is with the revitalization project. We cannot go into these neighborhoods and fix them up and do the things that we want to do. We have to get feedback from you guys so we know exactly what you want. So once again, we are facilitators, not dictators. My position is a little different because I'm involved with the youth from ages 3 all the way up to adulthood. I'm with the youth every day, putting those principles in to keep them away from drugs. So I'm in a different position because I feel like I don't want to be that one that owns a gun store and then telling kids don't buy guns or telling adults don't buy guns. I can't have one foot in and one foot out. If I'm going to push our youth and lead them in the right direction, I'm going to have to stay that way. I can't be in, I can't be out. I'm all for medicinal usage. If you can get a medical license, a marijuana license, and you actually need it, I think dispensaries should be here for you to have it. But that's for medicinal purposes only. When I started my campaign run, I said Decatur, I wanted Decatur to be a city of options, but options in moderation. When I speak of moderation, I'm speaking medicinal usage. Moderation, not recreational. Recreation, if you know the definition of recreation, is activities done for enjoyment while not at work. In that case, cocaine, heroin, and meth could be recreational. When I speak of recreational, I think of sports. And that's the field that I'm in and dealing with the kids. I know the kids didn't get me in this position, and I have to be an ear for you adults as well. But at the same time, my youth, your youth, they're the future of Decatur. So I am for medicinal usage, but not for recreational.
I will ask that as the councilmen are speaking, that you hold your comments. You will get your opportunity to come to the microphone, and we will hear from you. So you can applaud at the end or boo, but while people are speaking, please have the respect of the council, and let's everybody hear what everyone has to say. Councilman Kuehl.
First of all, I'd like to also thank everyone for attending and all the emails I've received. I've tried to respond to every email I've got. Whether you agreed or not with me, I did try to at least get back to you. I have no doubt that everyone is passionate about their position on this subject. During my discussion with residents during the past year, I understand that both sides have strong arguments, many of which I agree with. My stance is that I am in no hurry to approve any type of recreational marijuana dispensary or the businesses that support it at this time. I've based my decision on the following points. Number one, if recreational marijuana turns out to be a success in other communities, I believe there will be more opportunities down the road. I prefer to let Urbana, Springfield, Quincy, and others be the pilot programs. There are too many unknowns regarding safety, health, and law enforcement. We can always approve these businesses at a later date. If we approve a dispensary and auxiliary businesses now, there is no turning back. Number two, recreational marijuana would bring new jobs to this city. With that being said, Decatur is currently adding approximately 100 new jobs with the community care campus to fight drug addiction for our Macon County residents. In addition, we currently have approximately 1,000 job opportunities available in Decatur as we speak. There are many opportunities right now in our city for employment, so in some respects, there's no shortage of employment opportunities. Obviously, we welcome all new job opportunities, but the cannabis industry comes with potential red flags. Number three, along with Councilman Walker regarding our youth, what kind of message are we sending? That drugs are okay? It is no secret that recreational marijuana has been marketed to the young. I have worked with the youth of this city for the past 40 years in the athletic world, and opting in is so counterproductive to our development of these young athletes both on and off the field. Number four, let's talk tax revenue. Kyle Moore, the mayor of Quincy, Illinois, stated that he anticipates tax revenue between $60,000 and $200,000 a year through marijuana sales. Our city staff made a guesstimate of $200,000 to $360,000 a year for Decatur. Compare that to my conservative estimate of the $125 million that Howard G. Buffett Foundation has donated over time to our community. A majority, let me finish, you're going to get a chance to talk. A majority of this has been in support of law enforcement, fighting drug addictions, and quality of life attractions. Doing the math with an inflated $500,000 tax gain each year from cannabis, if we would get that into Decatur, it would take 250 years to reap the same rewards that our community has received from the Buffett Foundation. I personally can't think of a more flat-out rejection of our former sheriff and his foundation than to approve the sale of recreational marijuana without a wait-and-see approach. Number 5, this is not quite the same as the mall. Frankly, we hear this on most of our controversial issues. Granted, there is an argument about tax revenue. On the other hand, no one driving home from the mall is impaired after shopping. In addition, shopping at the mall does not affect your health, burden law enforcement, or our medical community. Finally, to those nearby municipalities in our county that are considering opening a dispensary, I just ask of you not to rush into this business if we vote to opt out. If the new law turns out to create additional hardships on our law enforcement and our medical community, do you really want to burden the same services that you rely on so you can make new tax dollars? Let's wait and see how other communities operate with the new law. In closing, I do not believe that anyone in this room, including myself, knows exactly how this will affect our city. I strongly feel the right way to approach this decision is to watch and learn from those that have chosen to opt in. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Gill. Councilwoman Gregory.
Well, one thing I know for sure is I won't make everyone in this room happy tonight, and that is not the purpose of why I'm here. There are 2 responsibilities that I have as a representative of the city of Decatur, and that is to fully understand the issue, and so I have done that. Throughout the nation, there are well over 25 high-intensity drug traffic area programs. And the purpose of those programs is to provide annual documentation regarding the impact of legalization of marijuana for medical and recreational use. In Colorado, which was the first state to legalize adult use cannabis, Colorado serves as the experimental lab for the nation to determine the impact of legalizing marijuana. It serves as an important area where we can gather and examine meaningful data and identify trends. The document that I studied a lot was called The Legalization of Marijuana in Colorado, The Impact. You can look it up yourself. It's volume 5. It was established in October of 2017, and you'll say that's 2 years old. The reason that the data is from 2017 is because this will be the 5th annual publication, and so they track trends over 3 years. So this is the 5th annual report on the impact of legalized marijuana in Colorado. And it's divided into 10 sections. And the data that is provided, that comes out of California, is not positive at all. As a matter of fact, it runs contrary to the legislation that was adopted by the General Assembly. And you might say that you don't agree with that and you think that everything will be fine. But I will tell you that even the legislators of the legislation don't agree with that. And I say that they don't agree with that because the way in which they structured the tax revenues for legalized marijuana and it implicitly says that there will be negative impacts that have to be cared for, taken care of. This is not an opinion. It's the legislation, it's the fact, it is currently the law of the land. So here's where the dollars go. First, subject to appropriations, the cost associated with the implementation, administration, and enforcement of the Act. So we have several state agencies that they anticipate are going to require $15 million in fiscal year 2020 to implement the Act. Second, subject to appropriation, amount to the Cannabis Expungement Fund for costs related to expungement. State courts, attorney general, state's attorneys, civil legal aid, and state police. It is anticipated that those entities will need $3.5 million in fiscal year 2020. Of the remaining amount left, 8% will go to local government distributive fund, distributed to counties and municipalities by population. However, that 8% will be restricted for funds to be used for crime prevention programs, training, and interdiction enforcements, including detection, enforcement, and prevention efforts relating to the illegal cannabis market and driving under the influence of cannabis. 25% is going to go to the Restore, Reinvest, and Renew program. 20% to the Department of Human Services to fund substance abuse and mental health programs. 10% to the Budget Stabilization Fund to pay our unpaid bills. 35% to the General Revenue Fund, and 2% to Drug Treatment Fund for public education campaign. One of the things that was really difficult for the state of Illinois, and I think that the city manager has indicated that, is that it was incredibly difficult to come up with a fiscal impact. A key limitation in these estimates that were predicated within the budget is the general lack of available market data and economic research into cannabis consumption. So when you think about the two ways in which the state of Illinois can tax, they can tax through the cannabis cultivation privilege tax, and they can tax through the cannabis purchaser excise tax. So at the upper bound of this limit, the state estimates that there may be as much as $46 million, and at the lower bound, $2 million. I want you to think back to the way the money was distributed. If we anticipate that there are going to be $46 million available to fund all of those programs, the lower bound is at $8 million. When you take the state's estimate, you already know to pay for everything that they have laid out, you're going to be at a negative $18.5 million. So if cannabis sales in our community do not make up the difference, we will be a negative $10.5 million in the hole. So,
Order, please. Let the councilwoman finish.
So we no longer now have a choice because the decision has already been made. I want to share something else with you that we may have the opportunity to look forward to. This was an article in the Chicago Tribune dated June 24th of 2019. It was written by Suzanne Baker. Car insurance premiums could rise as a result of legalized marijuana in Illinois. Vehicle insurance claims in the land of Lincoln could rise as the result of legalizing marijuana if Illinois follows a trend experienced in other states that allow the sale of recreational pot. Alyssa Connolly, Director of Market Insights for the online insurance comparison site The Zebra, said one of the factors insurance companies study when setting insurance premiums on vehicles is related to the number of claims reported in a community. and these claims will include traffic accidents or thefts. When claims are really up, companies often implement rate increases, Conley said. Premiums in Illinois have been stable in recent years, and that has the potential to change. In 4 states that were among the first to legalize pot, Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington, crashes were up as much as 6% compared with neighboring states without legalized recreational weed, according to the analysis of collision loss data from January 12 through October 17 by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. The research on marijuana and crashes indicate that legalizing marijuana for all uses is having a negative impact on the safety of our roads. So all of this data that I have given you is not my opinion. It's the data available that I have to use to formulate my opinion. The second prong that I have to take in the decision-making responsibility is to listen to the citizens. And like Mr. McDaniel, I have had a lot of input, not just an email, in the grocery store, on the sidewalk, in the Sievetal, Germany delegation with hosts this last 4 or 5 days. I have had more people say to me, please opt out.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gregory. And we will be hearing from the public in just a moment. Much of what I had to say has been said by my fellow council members tonight. When we have an opportunity for new revenue that is more of a user tax or fee, it's always attractive to members of the City Council because we don't want to raise taxes on people. As was stated earlier, nobody wants higher taxes and nobody wants their services cut. So when the opportunity comes along for additional revenue, it looks good to those of us sitting up here that have to keep the lights on. When this first was moving through the legislature, and it moved and became law with lightning speed, when it was first going through, I went to people locally that I feel are experts and the ones who are going to have to deal with this. What's the upside? And my first question was to law enforcement. And it was basically, are we giving up the funds we're going to need to combat problems that may be associated with legalizing marijuana? And what I heard back unequivocally from law enforcement was, you will never get enough money to cover the problems this will bring. I went to health officials, ER doctors, those that work with overdose victims, patients every day. And they said, don't do this. We've heard from churches, order, you will get your turn. I have talked to churches, I have heard from constituents. There are many people who want this to be legalized who don't feel like it's a big deal. This is a tough position for us to be in, but it's our job to make the best possible decisions we can. This is a family community, and it seems to be counterintuitive to me to be saying to our kids and our families, this is okay. At the same time that we are, excuse me? At the same time that we are building and supporting a center to help people who are addicted to drugs. So at this point, after I want to clarify with Councilman Faber, I believe it's been brought up, but Mr. Manager, if you would clarify, excuse me, if you could all just hold off for a minute, you'll get your turn. Councilman Faber had requested that the manager talk about the funds that might happen here.
And Council, as you have already said, it's very, very difficult to get a good handle on what sort of revenue can be coming here. We can't ask marijuana dealers, so how's business and what are your projections? So in the absence of that, all we have been able to do is use as a starting point, and my guess is, I don't know for certain, my guess is that the city of Quincy may have done the same thing, is took the state's estimate and then try to determine what percentage would be theirs. So it's only as good as the state's estimate. The state's estimate, I believe, is based on data that they got from other states. So they identified what the revenue was, and then they tried to extrapolate that to Illinois' economy and Illinois' population. So the numbers I gave you in my report are only as good as the state's estimate, but assuming that the state's estimate have some validity, then our challenge is to say, okay, what percentage of that would be Decatur's if you were to opt in to have dispensary license here? It could be, I could only think of two ways to do that. First is, what's our percentage of retail sales now, and extrapolate that. In other words, our percentage, our sales tax revenue over total sales tax revenue for the state, adjusted for, and making adjustments for the fact that our rate is different than the state's. Another way is to identify what our population is and what percentage over the total population of the state of Illinois as a reflection of buying power. Doing that produces the range that I put in the transmittal memo, which is $206,000 to $360,000 a year. It doesn't take account of two things. The first is that if, and this would be the case for the short term, but may not be for the long term, if there's only one retail dispensary in Decatur and in the Bureau of Labor Statistics area, which would be all of Macon County, then you could expect that could be slightly higher to reflect the fact that we'd have to take into consideration the entire county's economic buying power or its entire population. But not knowing whether or not that would be the case, I didn't factor that in. Nor does it take into consideration black market effects, which is even harder. I mean, it's impossible to determine that. All that they determined in Colorado is that the black market actually increased rather than decreased, because the black market sellers simply determined the price, the legal price, and stayed below that. Plus, it served to legitimize it. So I didn't factor that in either, because it's difficult to determine. So depending on how you factor that in, you could either decrease the 2006 or maybe move it up as far as $450,000 or so. But, Mayor and Council, this is just educated guesswork.
Thank you, Mr. Wrighton. At this point, we will turn to the public for comments. The way we're going to do this is I will start with